Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to a comparison video. We're going to compare the A2D-1 to the ME262A1U4 Narwhal. They're both effectively ground attackers, and they sit at the same battle rating. And to make a long story short, my analysis is that the Narwhal is probably still the better ground attacker, and the A2D-1 is most likely one of the strongest 6.7 aircraft in the game on account of its versatility and its power, both in flight performance and weapon loadout. And of course, this is a new aircraft to the game, so anything about this could change, but at this time, from what I see, I highly recommend this as a purchase if you're looking for a rank 4 ground attacker. It is rank 4, right? Yeah, it should be rank 5. It's the only 6-7 rank 4 in the game as far as aircraft that I'm aware of. But if you're looking for a rank 4 premium for America, or if you're just like me and you have a huge E-bone for both premium aircraft and specifically ground attackers, I recommend at this time. So let's get into comparing the stat cards first so we can get the lies out of the way. Max speed reads at 495. It accelerates up to 400 miles per hour very rapidly. Turn time 20 seconds. It does have fantastic low speed handling, not the best rate of turn, but very stable, and a much better turn rate at low speeds than almost every jet in the game, as jets tend to be quite heavy and not have the best power production at low speeds. A2D is one of those aircraft that has consistent, smooth power output, and it doesn't really lock up badly either, but that's not the stat card, is it? Rate of climb 34.4. The thing is a freaking rocket. Looking at the ME262, this is a spaded ME262, 538 miles per hour max speed, much higher than the A2D. This is a pure jet after all, and very heavy and powerful. Its low to mid-range acceleration is poor. Its mid to high-range acceleration is already better than the A2D because it can continue to accelerate beyond 400 miles per hour on the deck and fares well at an altitude of around 6,000 meters, as you see. Turn time 28 seconds, and it gets much worse the lower speed you are. Low speed handling is abysmal in the ME262. It is built for top speed and little else, and that definitely shows when you start to maneuver. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. High speed maneuverability is quite good though, so that is something to keep in mind. At least quite good for an early jet. Rate of climb 20 meters per second. That is a very respectable rate of climb. However, this is not a freaking rocket. I think the freaking rockets sit at 8.0 right now for the Germans. Let's get into some gameplay of test flight, and this will be the advanced test flight mode where I can compare the two in a similar environment without having to worry about the vagaries of PvP combat. And let's be honest, I've had a very busy and very long day today, and my brain just isn't up to competitive gameplay anyway. Let's get into some side-by-side comparison. Alright, let's start with the A2D, which is, I'm sure, what you came here to see, and right away, just after starting the custom test flight, you see that we're able to climb at 20 degrees climb rate, and we're actually accelerating beyond our initial speed of over 200 miles per hour. Incredible. The mid-altitude acceleration of this machine is monstrous, and you can see that we are just rocketing up here. We're easily out-climbing these 262s, so you will be able to start a match from a significant altitude advantage against jets, and many jets will not be climbing all that high, although I do recommend climbing in an ME-262. Also, as a side note, the A2D, of course, has some very good American jets to back it up in an up tier up to 7.7, where America is still very strong in the air. You're probably more likely to see problems with jets like the French jets if you get into a max up tier. And the tactics you'll see employed here against these ME-262 A2As are going to be pretty much the same as you would use against a higher tier jet, albeit with a lot less of an ability to chase them down even at the lower speeds. So starting from an altitude advantage, we're using our dive to dive down on 262s who are coming up toward us. Now, of course, this is AI, so they're not going to have the best tactics, and we're able to engage. It's going to be a bit before I get a feel for the guns of the A2 or the the A2D. I'm getting confused here, but they smack targets very hard. We're using universal belts here, so it's half AP and half HE, and I'm honestly not sure which is doing more damage, though I suspect it's the high explosive. The AP round, with around 25 to 30 millimeters of armor pen at reasonable ranges, is very capable of hitting hard as well. So let's cut forward to a little bit different part in the replay so that I can show you what I'm talking about here. In our initial engagement, we start with more energy and we use that to dive on the 262s. They do turn a bit, but the AI is set to advanced here, so they do a fairly good job of keeping their speed up, which is going to give them a serious advantage. However, they do end up turning with us, and that's our opportunity. And then if they come at us, we can easily avoid their guns. Even at higher speeds, we have better maneuverability than the ME-262, so we can slide out from in front of them and be able to get those defensive shots if they don't persist in turning like you see this ME-262 doing. So let's get into the defensive flying part of the gameplay, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. First off, at close range and lower speeds, the A2D has the clear advantage. There's really not anything this 262 can do to get me off his tail. If he puts his nose down and accelerates, he will top out his speed before we do, but even so, you can see he's able to pull away at mid speeds, but I'm able to get my guns on target and they hit very hard, to the point where those few extra seconds it takes for a 262 to pull away from the very zippy A2D makes the A2D even more deadly than the Bearcats and F7Fs that a 262 will sometimes face, and often regret giving them the chance to take a look at the booty. And here you see just the fantastic lower speed maneuverability of the A2D. It really flies like an AD4 that is just increased in every parameter. It has that great smooth controllability, by no means a lightweight aircraft, and you feel that in the responsiveness of the thing, but it has a very predictable flight path. It has consistent controllability at all speeds, and that's something that really stands out when you're facing the 262, which turns into a dump truck at low speeds. Look at this loop, just beautiful, clean maneuvers, and that's what you can expect out of the A2D at this time. The rudder, very responsive. The mouse flight is not exactly what I would hope for. It's not the best, but I'm used to using a lot of keyboard inputs in my flight as well. Another note with the A2D specifically is that it has a massive rear stabilizer. As you see, the vertical stabilizer is just enormous, really reminiscent. In fact, the entire tail section looks like an F7F, and that's one of the problems I have had with my F7F, is that when you zoom in, all you see is the booty. So you kind of feel like a wolf, peeking out of one eye and having to kind of come at your target cockeyed if you're gonna move in for that kill shot. Alternatively, you can get used to firing from a zoomed out perspective, and that's actually worked really well for me in the past. And you can see that at close ranges or at lower speeds, the A2D just absolutely eats the lunch of these ME262s. However, the ME262, especially the A2A, which is a premium, or is it I think it is, yeah, a premium vehicle. Quite nice, extremely rare, although you will see them occasionally. It performs much better at high speeds, not in terms of maneuverability, but in terms of being able to produce that speed and use it to your advantage. And I'll show you in the form of the Narwhal what's that like. And the Narwhal does have very similar handling to the ME262A2A, both of them sitting at a 6.7, and then the higher battle rating ME262 also handles very similar, at least to the point where until you deal with the one that has rockets, and I think that's at 8.0 or something, there's not a significant... Ooh, those long-range shots though. These AN M3 cannons are working out very nicely for me, and you get a generous complement of ammunition for them, this being a ground attacker that you can afford to do a little bit of sprayer and prayer and hope to make a connection with the enemy. So let's take a look at the Narwhal, and it's going to be against the Firecrest, which is obviously not the same thing as an A2D, but at low range it's going to demonstrate the poor maneuverability and the fact that you just don't want to engage in a turn fight with anything in an ME262, and you'll see the way that the Firecrest can just completely outfly them in the same way that an A2D would. So you can compare notes now. Okay, here is the ME262A1U4 Narwhal, and again, it has very similar handling to the A2D, and right from the start you can see that we do not have nearly the acceleration of the A2D at lower speed ranges, talking anything below around 400 miles per hour. The A2D is going to have better acceleration. As far as climb rate, we're never going to match the A2D, and I'm going to have to build up airspeed before I start to zoom climb in the Narwhal. Now, once you do get your speed upwards of 500 miles per hour, you can zoom quite high in the Narwhal, but again, that's something you can only use for a short amount of time in a certain situation, and that's something you'll have to work into your strategy if you end up facing vehicles like the A2D, and at this point in the game there's really nothing like them other than that rank 4 premium itself. So here we have a chance to compare the performance of these vehicles. Excuse me as I stumble over my tongue a little bit here, and this will be quite familiar to those of you that have flown the ME262, so I'll let the stats you see on the left side of the screen sort of speak for themselves. You'll be able to see my strategy here. I was not trying to fly in a meta way to take down these Firecrest. I was being very experimental and just seeing the way that the Firecrest itself can respond to what my 262 was doing, and the tactics that you see the AI using here are exactly the kinds of tactics you can expect from an A2D. and you'll see the difficulties we have with maneuvering at all against these enemy fighters. Even at lower speeds, we do have a chance to get guns on target, but the Narwhal is not the most famed anti-fighter platform, and that comes down to its limited ammunition, low fire rate, and just general spread on the main gun that are all appropriate balancing factors for how powerful it is in an anti-bomber or anti-tank capacity at which it excels. I mentioned that the Narwhal is probably the better ground attacker when compared with the A2D. The American attacker that is actually classified as an attacker, whereas of course the Narwhal is classified as a jet fighter, which is appropriate, but I would like to see the Narwhal classified as an attacker. It is the role that it excels at the most, and Germany definitely needs more attackers, especially since America now has a rank 4 6.7 battle rating attacker. But I digress. The Narwhal is a more reliable attacker, even with the vast number of small bombs you can carry on the A2D. You have more chances to get ordnance on target with the Narwhal, and zero chance to collateral damage yourself. As you see, we take some spray from the fire crest. That could have been fatal. Maneuvering with any kind of propeller fighter is not a good idea in the ME-262, and that gives a clear advantage in any kind of turning or maneuvering engagement other than the boom and zoom tactics you can expect out of a Narwhal. So, I mentioned that you have a pretty good chance of causing damage or destruction to yourself with the bombs of the A2D, and that comes down to a patch that was added to the game just before update 1.89 that seemed to double or roughly double the splash zone of self-damage for dropping bombs, to the extent that the bomb fuse I was using of around 1 second or even maybe 2 seconds for very large bombs was not sufficient. Even 500-pound bombs with a 2-second delay, well, maybe 1.5 seconds, would still hit me with some shrapnel, occasionally killing me from, let's say, half a kilometer away. It was just absolutely ridiculous, and hopefully that will be adjusted. It's clear that Gaijin is looking at ways of balancing close air support ordnance in a way that gives tankers a bit more of a chance. Also, bombs now have a damage model and can be destroyed before they reach their target, very often destroying the attacker in the process, as again, the fragmentation zone for self-damage from bombs has been what appears to be roughly doubled. So if someone shoots your bomb out of the sky with their machine gun, which I've actually experienced in some of my test flight with AI with their roof-mounted anti-aircraft machine guns, blowing up a bomb mid-flight. It was a 500-pound bomb. It was probably 100 meters from my airplane when it was detonated prematurely. I swear it never happens to me. By enemy ground fire, and it just immediately nuked my airplane. So dropping bombs in CAS is much more hazardous than it used to be to the attacker, which is something the A2D is going to experience. And look at us using some negative elevator to really make this nice wide turn, and you can see we conserve almost all of our energy here. That's going to give us a chance to zoom in on these on these fire crests. And again, if this was an A2D, he would have time to get some defensive fire shots on us, and you can see that as soon as they start to pull, it's very difficult to line them up, and that's always going to be the case with every type of ME-262. So again, in a head-to-head fight, if you know what to do, it's very very possible to defensive fly against early German jets, and you have enough speed that you have that much more time to take your counterattack shots as the enemy jet pulls away, to the point that if they turn at all, you can start a turning engagement and catch up to them very rapidly, opening fire on this flock of fire crests, and no sauce. Again, the Narwhal does not have the most effective gun. So that's a comparison of the two. There's still going to be a lot of changes, I suspect, to the A2D, but at this time it is a very, very strong aircraft. Great ability to defensive fly against jets, fantastic speed that outstrips everything that doesn't have a pure jet system for propulsion that it could possibly face, and a vehicle that I will be unafraid to use in both air and mixed battles. In fact, I very much look forward to it. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope it was informative to you. You can see the way that the acceleration and speed, low speed handling, all work together to make the A2D a very solid platform, and hopefully the comparison to the Narwhal was helpful for you. But anyway, this video has gone on far too long and I need to get some sleep. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye bye.